What keeps most people broke isn't a lack of intelligence. It's ignorance, plain and simple. Ignorance of how money works and how small habits shape your entire financial future. And today, you're going to hear some of the strongest financial guidance you'll ever come across. The kind that completely changed the way I think about earning, spending, and saving. We live in a society that makes overspending effortless. Credit is pushed at us from every direction. Debt is marketed as normal. Entire platforms are built to get you to buy things you don't need. And if you're buying those things, especially on credit, you're building habits that quietly trap you. Because every dollar of debt is a piece of your future that someone else owns. You can have money and still have no independence. So what do? You treat saving like an expense, just as mandatory as rent or groceries. And the most powerful thing you can do is automate it. Every paycheck, even if it's only $50, move it into savings before you ever touch it. Make it automatic, and you remove the hardest part, relying on willpower. Because life will test you. Job loss, illness, recessions, relationship breakdowns, something on that list will happen to you. It's a guarantee. And when it does, the savings you've built will be more valuable than anything you've ever bought. And if you're thinking, what's the point? I can barely pay my bills. I hear you. I understand that frustration. But I want you to know this. Your ability to build stability, freedom, and financial independence is absolutely in your control. It doesn't matter where you come from, how much you earn, or what your past looks like. Wealth isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about how you think and behave with money. Behavior is something every one of us can change. I've seen people with no degree, no special background, nothing but discipline and patience, become incredibly stable and successful financially. And I've seen people with elite education, elite jobs, elite opportunities go completely broke. That's the difference. In most fields, the untrained can't outperform the expert. But with money, behavior beats brilliance every single day. And that means your starting point doesn't matter. What matters is what you choose to do next. This happens with money because it's not about what you know. You don't need secret formulas, and you don't need special connections. If you get your thinking right and your behavior right, you can do well. Patience, keeping your expectations in check, not comparing yourself to other people, and using money as a tool to build a better life instead of a yardstick to measure yourself against others. This is simple stuff. And the truth is, about 99% of what you need to succeed with money is already in your control. For a long time, I made the same mistake a lot of people make. I believed there was some hidden formula, some private club for rich people, that it all came down to who you know or where you went to school. But that's focusing on the wrong things. What actually matters are behaviors, real, learnable behaviors that help you get good with money. And the reality is they're not complicated. They're not easy, but they are simple. And they're fully within your control. If you can focus on your own goals instead of constantly comparing yourself to others, if you can save a portion of what you earn, live even slightly below your means, invest consistently, and stay patient, that alone puts you ahead of most people. That's not advanced finance. That's not Wall Street jargon or complicated formulas. That's a basic, almost kindergarten level list, and it works. Part of this is redefining what financial success actually means. We're not talking about private jets or islands. For most people, real financial success looks like stable housing for their family, a financial cushion in case of job loss or a medical emergency, the ability to retire with dignity, and the freedom to spend time with the people they care about. Those are strong, meaningful goals, and that level of success is achievable for almost everyone. Money is meant to be a tool to support your life, not a scoreboard to rank yourself against others. And yes, that's easier said than done, because comparison is natural. It's human to measure success not by what you have, but by what you have relative to someone else, your neighbor, your coworker, your sibling. But what makes this harder today than ever before is that comparison is no longer limited to a small group of people. Before we fully dive in, I just ask for one small thing. If you can, take a second to like or hype the video. It really helps to reach more people who might need these words today. Thank you. Now, your comparison group is an algorithm. Every time you open social media, you're shown someone who looks happier, richer, more successful, more put together than you, no matter how well you're actually doing. And that's why this lesson matters more now than it ever has. Managing expectations, resisting constant comparison, and staying grounded in your own goals is harder today than it's ever been, but it's also more important than ever. I see this with my own kids. When I was growing up, my definition of wealth was simple. Regular people drove old pickup trucks, and rich people drove new ones. That was it. If you had a brand new truck, you were rich. My son sees it completely differently. To him, rich means private jets and private islands because that's what he watches online. That becomes the baseline. And that's a completely different level of expectation than what I grew up with 20 or 30 years ago. And here's the hard truth. No matter how much you know about money, your kids probably aren't going to listen to you. That's normal. But it makes something incredibly important clear. If you want a healthy relationship with money, you have to develop the ability to look inward for what matters instead of constantly looking outward at influencers, algorithms, or what your neighbor is driving. A lot of people today feel like they're falling behind, especially younger adults. People in their 20s and 30s already feel like they're not making enough, like they'll never afford a home, like they'll never catch up. And for older people, the fear is different. It's the feeling that it's too late, that they have already blown their chance, that retirement may not be possible. The first place to start is empathy. These feelings are real. In many areas, especially things like home ownership, people genuinely are worse off compared to previous generations. This isn't about telling people to just feel better or be more grateful. Rising costs, medical bills, and cost of living pressures have created real stress, and pretending otherwise doesn't help anyone. But once you start with empathy, you have to understand this. Happiness is the gap between expectations and reality. You have the life you're living, and you have the life you expect to live. The space between those two is where happiness or misery lives. And the wider that gap becomes, the worse you're going to feel. So when someone is panicking because they thought they'd be further along financially, worried they'll run out of money or never be able to retire, in many cases the issue isn't income, it's expectations. Over time, expectations spiral. Spending increases to match an identity instead of a budget. People rent nicer apartments than they can afford, travel more than they should, eat out, dress a certain way, not because it fits their financial reality, but because it fits who they think they're supposed to be. And yes, that's uncomfortable to hear, but it's also common. Almost everyone goes through this at some point. There's no shame in it. The moment you recognize it is the moment you regain control. A big reason I became so interested in this topic started by looking in the mirror and asking myself hard questions. When was I envious? When did my expectations spiral out of control? And the truth is, no one is immune to this. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I can be honest about that because I've lived it. I walked into stores, swiped my card, bought things I didn't need with money I didn't have. And the truth is, we spent money we didn't have. We racked up debt. Years later, as we were climbing our way out, something unexpected happened. I felt relief because I could finally say to myself, I'm responsible for this. I can see how I made bad decisions because my expectations were completely out of proportion to reality. And oddly enough, admitting that gave me power. Because if I had the power to make bad decisions, then I also had the power to make better ones. A lot of this comes back to expectations. Money is incredibly easy to measure. If I say I want to be a better parent or a better partner, that's hard to define. But if I say I want a bigger apartment, more money per hour, or a few new things, that's clear. It's measurable. It's simple. And that's why people chase money and spending. It's easy to understand and easy to track. When you don't have a clear picture of what a good life actually looks like, it's easy to default to thinking that a good life just means more money. It feels simpler than asking harder questions like, how do I become a better parent, a better spouse, a better friend, or a better human being? Those questions are uncomfortable. Money feels like a shortcut. A powerful example of this comes from someone who once believed that if they just made more money, all their problems would disappear. That belief gave them hope. But when the money finally came and the problems stayed, the illusion collapsed. And that's when it became clear. Money can solve some problems, but it won't fill the deeper psychological gap people are trying to fill with it. So if you're listening and telling yourself, I'm so far behind, there are two things to understand. First, you're in the right place. It's not too late. There are simple, basic behavior changes, nothing complicated, that can help you get good with money. But the deeper question you need to ask is this: what is money trying to fix for me right now? What hole am I trying to fill? And once you ask that, you can start redefining what a good life actually means. Whether you're in your 20s or your 60s, becoming a better friend, taking better care of yourself, building a life that feels meaningful. Those things don't require beating yourself up over your finances. That's the real shift. Before getting into tactics, it's important to acknowledge something real. This is a genuinely difficult moment when it comes to money, jobs, and financial stability. If you're sitting there thinking, I'm scared I won't find work, I'm scared I won't make it, that feeling is valid. That is your truth, and it deserves empathy. Where it's worth adding perspective is when people say, this is worse than it's ever been. Because when you look at how previous generations actually lived, that idea becomes more complicated. A lot of people point to the 1950s as the golden age of middle-class prosperity. But if you look closely at how the average middle-class family lived back then, it's a standard of living that most people today would consider extremely limited. Small homes, often around 800 square feet, multiple children in 2 bedrooms, no air conditioning, no washer or dryer, and none of the conveniences we now see as normal. They were content then, but that level of contentment wouldn't satisfy us today. And that's an important distinction. More money doesn't automatically create happiness. What people are really chasing isn't happiness, it's contentment. When you imagine yourself in a bigger house or on a luxury vacation, the feeling you're imagining isn't joy or excitement. It's the feeling of saying, "This is enough." But what usually happens when people actually reach those milestones is that contentment doesn't last. You go on the trip and suddenly it's, if only we stayed at a better hotel, if only we stayed longer, if only we had the nicer experience. Comparison creeps in, expectations shift, and the finish line moves again. Once you understand that what you're really chasing is contentment, something important becomes clear. A lot of financial stress, a lot of the feeling of falling behind, and a lot of the gap between what you have and what you want comes from expectations, not income alone. Now, if you're thinking, "I'm just not good with money," you're not alone. A lot of people carry that story with them for years. Maybe you went through a divorce, maybe you handed control to someone else and now you're starting over. The real question is, can anyone actually get good with money? The answer is yes, if they want to. Because this isn't complicated. It's basic arithmetic. Spend less than you make. Save the difference. Be patient. That's it. You could explain this to a 5-year-old. Saying, "I'm not good with money," often becomes a way to opt out of responsibility. Bad financial habits are easy. We live in a world that encourages overspending, debt, and instant gratification. If that's what you want, it's effortless. But the moment you decide you want something different, this becomes manageable for anyone. It's not about intelligence, it's about choice. And this conversation reminds me of something I once heard a musician say. Everyone loves the story about how they had to live in their car for a year while they were starting out. But nobody actually wants to live in their car for a year. And that applies to money too. If you're in debt, getting out of it is going to require sacrifice. It usually means a downshift in lifestyle compared to what you're used to. A lot of people who say, "I'm not good with money," what they're really saying is, "I don't want to make the sacrifice." And that's an honest truth. But here's the interesting part. People are actually very willing to suffer if the goal is noble enough. Humans will work hard, struggle, and endure discomfort when they believe the outcome is worth it. So the question becomes, what is the noble goal of getting good with money? If the goal is just to make more money, that's not very motivating. But if the goal is contentment, being okay with your life, that changes everything. For me, and for most people I've seen do this well, the real goal isn't being rich. It's independence. It's waking up and knowing you can choose how you spend your day. Money becomes a tool to support that freedom, not a scoreboard. I have no interest in flashy cars or massive houses. I want control over my time and my choices. I've seen people with very little money who were completely independent, beholden to no one, influenced by no one, and they lived incredible lives because of it. And I've seen people with enormous wealth who were completely trapped by expectations, opinions, and pressure. For them, money became a financial asset but a psychological liability. It controlled their identity. Here's a thought experiment I come back to often. Imagine living on a deserted island with your family. No one can see your house, your car, your lifestyle. If no one was watching, what would you choose? In that situation, most people instantly shift from status to utility. Status disappears when there's no audience. What matters is what actually supports a good life. And that's where the difference becomes clear. The things that impress others are often not the things that serve you and your family. You can make an enormous amount of money and still feel like you're falling behind if you're chasing other people. There's a saying that everyone envies what you have, but no one envies what it took to get there. We see the house, the car, the clothes, but we don't see the stress, the sacrifices, or the costs that came with them. That's why financial envy is so misleading. You're comparing your reality to someone else's highlight reel without knowing what else is happening in their life. And it's why studies showing that wealth doesn't guarantee happiness are so hard to accept. People hear that and think, fine, I'll be the exception. Or, let me experience it myself. Because the belief that more money will solve everything is incredibly powerful. And for people who've been there, the message is usually the same. Money can help. It just helps a lot less than you think. After more than 2 decades of studying, researching, writing, and teaching about money, the single biggest thing that keeps people broke is comparison. That constant feeling that other people have more, are doing better, and are happier. Once you step onto that treadmill, there's no finish line. There is no moment where you finally say, this is enough, because the goalpost keeps moving. If you think a bigger house will do it, it won't. If you think a raise will finally make you feel secure, it won't. And when you're on that treadmill, it becomes almost impossible to ever feel like you're doing well financially. You don't need that much to feel content. Once your basic needs are covered, food, shelter, stability, everything beyond that moves from what you need into what you want. And most of us know this intuitively. You can walk into your closet right now and probably point to a small handful of clothes you wear all the time. Everything else was something you wanted in the moment, thought you needed, or hoped would impress someone for a specific occasion. And that right there is what keeps people broke. It's simple. People may not like hearing it, but they already know it's true. One of the hardest financial skills to learn is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Because if your expectations rise at the same pace as your results, there's no logic in striving for more. You'll feel the same after putting in extra effort. It gets dangerous when the taste of having more money, more power, more status starts increasing ambition faster than satisfaction. At that point, every step forward pushes the goalpost even further away. You start to feel like you're falling behind, and the only way to catch up feels like taking bigger and bigger risks. That idea came from self-reflection, not mastery. Because this trap is easy to fall into. There's always someone getting richer faster than you. And if your happiness depends on validation, on having what someone else has, you will never be satisfied with what's in front of you. What makes it worse is how quickly the expectation scales. You tell yourself you'll be happy once you hit a certain number. Then you hit it, and the number changes. 10,000 becomes 100,000. 100,000 becomes 1,000,000, and it keeps growing. I experienced this firsthand. As soon as some financial pressure eased or I got a small reward at work, I immediately upgraded the things I was already buying. That pattern is incredibly common. And to be clear, spending money isn't inherently bad. It's not about living like a monk or never enjoying anything. You can absolutely spend money in ways that genuinely improve your life. I've done that myself and thought that was worth it. But everything comes back to expectations. If you don't control them, no amount of money will ever feel like enough. I grew up in a town that wasn't very wealthy. It is now, because tech money eventually moved in, but back then it was a solid middle-class place. And then I made a drastic shift from a middle-class mountain town to an area like Beverly Hills. And what that did to my definition of rich was shocking. Growing up, a rich person drove a brand new pickup truck. That was it. A new F-150 meant you had made it. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and that definition completely exploded. No matter how successful you are, you pull up to a stoplight, and even if you're driving something exotic, there are plenty of people right next to you with the same or more. And suddenly, nothing ever feels like enough. Looking back, the conditions for happiness were actually much better in that middle-class town. I managed to keep my expectations in check in LA, and honestly, a lot of that came from fear. I was always worried I wouldn't make it, so I saved aggressively. But when I look around and ask who was actually happier, it wasn't the people chasing more. It was the people living modest lives, enjoying their families, spending time with friends, taking care of their health, and not constantly comparing themselves to others. That brings up an interesting question about aspiration, especially when it comes to parents. If you ask parents what they want for their kids, most of them will say they just want them to be happy. And if you follow that up with, do you want them to be rich and successful? Most parents will say, sure, that would be great, but I really just want them to be happy. Parents say that because they know from experience that those are not the same thing. Even a modest, middle-class life can be deeply fulfilling if expectations are in check and focus stays on what actually matters. And that ties back to how we casually use the word happiness. What we usually mean is contentment, being present in your life and not constantly reaching for something else. So how do you figure out why you're spending money? Because most people spend mindlessly. They buy things out of boredom, stress, or impulse without ever stopping to ask why. A simple way to become more conscious is to recognize that every dollar you spend falls into one of two buckets. Either you're spending money to make your life and your family's life better, or you're spending money to impress other people, most of whom are strangers and not paying attention anyway. Buying food for your family is obvious. But things like cars, clothes, and upgrades often fall into that second category. And when you realize how much of your spending is driven by trying to impress people who are busy worrying about themselves, something clicks. You start to see the game for what it is. Every dollar is a choice. You're either using money as a tool to build a better life, or you're using it as a status marker to measure yourself against others. That realization alone can change the way you spend and the way you live. So how do you actually tell the difference between buying something because you genuinely need it and buying it because it looks cool, you think you'll look good in it, and you're feeling a little insecure in the moment? Because most of us don't really stop to ask that question. We just feel the urge and hit buy. I had a moment like this in college that completely changed how I think about spending. I worked as a valet at a 5-star hotel in Los Angeles. It was an incredible job. I got to drive some of the nicest cars in the world, and for a 19-year-old, that alone felt unreal. But more importantly, it was my first real window into the psychology of very wealthy people. I remember noticing something during one of my shifts. When someone pulled up in a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, I would stop and admire the car, but I never looked at the driver and thought, that person is amazing. Instead, I imagined myself in the driver's seat. I imagined that if I were driving that car, people would look at me and think I was impressive. And then it hit me. I didn't care about the driver at all. I just wanted to be the driver because I thought other people would care about me. That realization was powerful. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. People are too busy thinking about themselves. Even when someone seems impressed by your house or your car, what they're really doing is imagining themselves owning it, not admiring you as a person. Once that sinks in, the desire to impress others starts to lose its grip. That doesn't mean you stop caring entirely. You still want to look put together. You still want to feel confident. But the illusion that strangers are evaluating you based on your stuff starts to collapse. And when that illusion fades, contentment becomes a lot easier to reach. The truth is, people don't admire other people the way we think they do. They admire objects because they imagine having them. And when it comes to the people who actually matter in your life, your partner, your family, your closest friends, they don't care about your car or your clothes. What they care about is whether you're present, patient, supportive, and kind. We spend so much time telling ourselves that better things will make life better. But intuitively, we already know that what really matters is being a good partner, a good friend, and a good parent. And if you truly wanted strangers to be impressed by you, it wouldn't be your possessions that do it. It would be how you treat them. Now, none of this means the urge disappears overnight. Even after years of thinking about this, the pull is still there. It's powerful. You still catch yourself thinking, this thing will make me happier. But here's something that makes it undeniable. Everyone knows someone with a massive house or an incredible car who is deeply unhappy, and someone else with far less who is completely at peace. That contrast tells you everything you need to know. Having all the things you want doesn't make you become the kind of person you admire. Most of us understand that intellectually. But if you have bad spending habits, the real question is how you actually change them. And the place to start isn't budgeting, it's understanding why those habits exist in the first place. What hole are you trying to fill? What has buying these things actually done for your happiness in the past? And for most people, if they're honest, the answer is very little. That's why this process has to start with some self-reflection. You have to sit with yourself, literally or figuratively, and ask, what am I trying to achieve? Who do I want to become? Why do I want that? And why do I think these purchases are the way to get there? For a